Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining the webinar today. The Natural Hazard Mitigation Association, which hopefully most of you are familiar with, is a nonprofit organization whose mission really is to foster collaboration among individuals, groups, communities around promoting hazard mitigation and disaster resiliency. We do a lot of work on education, information sharing, and our members have access to a great deal of resources that come out nationally. We've just started this monthly webinar series, and we're very excited to have this webinar today in the community rating system. You can learn a lot more about NHMA on our website, which is www.nhma.info, and I don't want to take up too much time away from the speakers, so I think that's probably enough for me.
All righty. Thank you, Alessandra. Once again, I'm French Wetmore. Let me get into some basic introduction of the community rating system. I think a good number of folks on the call are actually not in the CRS, or they would be hopefully could use some background information, even if they are in, to pass on to their bosses on why they should be supporting the program. But the CRS is a part of FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program. It is a FEMA program. It is voluntary. There are 22,000 communities in the NFIP, but only 1,200 in the CRS. So we like to consider them to be the cream of the crop. For some reason, all the others have not opted to join yet, but while it's a small number of 1,200, about 6% of all the communities are in the CRS. They actually have 66%, two-thirds of all the flood insurance policies. So the communities in the CRS actually form the bulk of the nation's flood problems, having two-thirds of all the insurance policies. The idea is to give communities an incentive, a recognition through lower premiums for flood insurance, where the community shows they are doing a better than minimal floodplain management program. So the key is, what are you doing above and beyond the minimum requirements of the NFIP? The program started being put together about 25 years ago. It was modeled on the fire insurance system, which has about 100 years of really good experience using insurance premiums to improve fire programs. And so FEMA contracted with the same people who ran the fire insurance program, which is the Insurance Services Office. They're a separate company that work for insurance companies. The key person from your perspective as a community is the ISO CRS specialist, where there are 15 specialists who cover the whole country. If you don't know who yours are, that URL will tell you who they are for every state in the country. And that URL and this whole webinar will also be on the NHMA website, so that you can run this down if you don't copy it down yet. So the program has three goals. The first goal is to look at what is insurable property. Remember, this is driven by the flood insurance program. Insurable property is basically buildings. And so if you as a community are doing things to reduce or avoid damage to buildings, then the program wants to give you some recognition. It also has a goal of strengthening the insurance aspects of the program, which communities can do primarily by encouraging more people to buy insurance, which makes the policy base larger, spreads the risk, makes for a stronger program, or help with data for accurate rating. The third goal is really a new one in the last few years, and FEMA is telling communities, listen, we care about more than just insurable property. We want a comprehensive program that deals with life safety, deals with critical facilities, deals with roads and bridges, deals with natural floodplain functions. And so if you have a community program that does all of that, we'll give you credits in addition to the credits for protecting insurable property. So here's how it works. As a community, starting next year, we will have a really short and sweet quick check. It's an Excel-based form online that you can use to determine roughly how many points you would get. And if you get a minimum number of points, then you would have a verification visit. The quick check would be sent to the ISO specialist. The specialist would come out, sit down, go through your program with you for a day or two, and review it, collect documentation, report back to ISO, who reports back to FEMA, and after some number of months, you would be entered into the program. Every year after you're in the program, you would annually recertify that you're still doing everything that you're getting credit for. At any time, you can submit a modification to improve your standing. And every 5 years, or more often for certain communities, your ISO specialist will come back out and visit you and go through your whole program all over again. So we don't want to lose touch with you. They will be in touch periodically during the year and face-to-face during a verification visit. If you want to join, you've got to do some minimum criteria. The first is you have to pass a community assistance visit. That documents to FEMA that you are meeting the minimum requirements of the NFIP. You need to designate a person who is the CRS coordinator. That's the person that ISO would be in touch with. That's not the same as, a lot of people confuse that with the person do everything in floodplain management. No, it's supposed to coordinate what the various departments of the community do that deserve CRS credit. And you need a letter from your chief executive officer, your mayor, your city manager, county board chairman, that saying we want to join and here is our official CRS coordinator. And that's really about all you got to do, that and the quick check to get into the program. Once you are in, you obviously have to keep implementing the things that the CRS is going to credit. You have to annually recertify, and you have to keep records so when ISO comes back and visits you, they can verify you have been doing the stuff over the previous years. Those in the CRS will tell you it's all about points. You can get so many points for every activity that you do. And you add them up. If you get at least 500 points, you move from a Class 10 to a Class 9. A Class 10 is basically a community not in the program. 500 or more points gets a Class 9. Every 500 points improves one class. As you improve each class, your insurance premium reduction in the SFHA improves by 5%. SFHA is the special flood hazard area. That's the mapped floodplain on a FEMA flood insurance rate map. So if you're in the FEMA mapped floodplain, you're a Class 8, your residents would get a 10% reduction in their premiums. And you can see it goes all the way up to a 45% reduction. Policies on properties outside the special flood hazard area get a 5 or a 10% break. Not as big a break because most of the activities that are credited relate to what's going on in the floodplain. FEMA has a policy, a flood insurance policy called a preferred risk policy or a PRP. Those policies have really low rates because they are for properties not in the floodplain that have no real history of flooding. So they are preferred risk, getting a low risk rate. FEMA said we're not going to give them another break beyond that and give them a CRS discount on top of their already low rates. Besides, they're not supposed to have much of a flood problem and wouldn't benefit from the community's programs that much. So the big thing you want to focus on, of course, is how does this help your floodplain residents? And we do have communities getting 25, 30, 35, 40% rate breaks. Said we had 1,200 communities in the program. You can see, not surprisingly, the majority of them are in the Class 7, 8, 9. Those are the easier ones to get. Over the years, that curve has moved slowly but surely to the right because as communities join, they improve their class, and the more communities are moving to the better classes. You can see an abrupt change between the Class 5 and the Class 4. To get to be a Class 5, just about all you got to do is keep getting points. To be a Class 4 or better, though, you have to do more than just get points. You have to implement a floodplain management plan, a master watershed management plan, some higher regulatory standards. There's a variety of other things you have to do. So right now, we only have communities that are CRS Class 4 or better. Here's the distribution. You can see the program is very active all around the country. The heaviest involvement, not surprisingly, is on the southeast coast. That's where so many flood insurance policies are. The coloring on the map represents the various territories that the ISO specialists cover. And actually in Florida, we have 3 full-time specialists covering Florida because there's so much participation there. You can see while the distribution is all over the country, our star communities, those 11 Class 4 or better communities, are actually heavily out in the West. It's interesting where even though they don't have a lot of policies in the West compared to the East Coast, they have a lot of very good floodplain management programs, and maybe that's why they don't have a lot of policies. They don't have a lot of properties in the floodplain. So any community anywhere in the country obviously can come up with any class, and we are glad to see distribution all over the country. There is concentration in Florida. As I mentioned, 20% of all the CRS communities are in Florida, 40% of all the policies. FEMA regions in the southeast, regions 4 and 6, have the bulk of the program. The rules for the program are all written out in a CRS Coordinator's Manual. Currently, the 2007 manual is in effect. It is being replaced next year. We have online the draft of next year's manual. It is a draft. It's not official, but that's what we're teaching in our classes, and that's what we recommend folks read if they want to look more into the program and they're not in it yet. The manual has sections that are numbered. The numbering system helps us relate different sections in the manual to other publications. You can see obviously it starts with an introduction and a section on procedures, but the bulk of the manual is in 300, 400, 500, and 600. And those are the sections that discuss the different activities that can get credited. So that's what tells you how many points is doing something worth. In those 4 series, we have 19 activities and 96 different elements in those 19 activities. So there's a whole lot of different ways a community can get credit for doing things. And you can see the range of things that can do. So in the 300 series, there's credit for keeping elevation certificates and making them available to the public, credit for helping people read the flood insurance rate map, and in the new manual, it's for helping people with other map information like natural and beneficial function areas, credit for outreach projects, mailers to people in the floodplain, presentations to groups, real estate disclosure rules for properties in the floodplain, references in your library, having a website, and then actually going out and helping people face-to-face look at their flood problem and giving them advice. So that's the 300 series of public information activities. In the 400 series, there is credit for better mapping, for keeping the floodplain open, a lot more credit in the new manual for keeping the floodplain open in naturally preserved open space. Credit for higher regulatory standards such as freeboard, better substantial improvement rules, critical facilities protections, and building codes. Credit for GIS, putting the floodplain in your GIS system, better records of benchmarks and core stations, stormwater management rules. In the 500 series of flood loss prevention to existing properties, we have credits and requirements for repetitive losses, for floodplain management or hazard mitigation plans, for buyouts and clearing buildings out of the floodplain, or elevating or otherwise protecting buildings that are left in the floodplain, and for drainage system maintenance. And then the 600 series deals with flood warning and response, having communities plugged into a flood threat recognition system like the Weather Service gauges, issuing flood warnings, having flood response operations such as closing roads or ordering evacuations, and dealing with critical facilities. And there's special credits that have been really revamped in the new manual for having warning and response programs for levee failure and for dam failure. So you can see for CRS credit, a community ought to involve their emergency manager, their public works director, their building department, their planning department, their public information officer, maybe their parks department. A whole variety of different departments in a community can have an impact on flood losses and the goals of the CRS. So the coordinator has an important job to get in touch with all those folks and see what they're doing and apply for the credit. So the benefits to communities. Now what I want to tell you are the general benefits that are in the book, and then the other speakers will talk about the benefits that they've personally experienced. The one that most people are interested in is that money stays in your community. Instead of paying money to an insurance company, some of that money will stay and hopefully be spent locally. we can tell you for any particular community how much money we're talking about. This is a community with a lot of flood insurance policies, Palm Beach, Florida, 8,000 policies. Half of them are in the special flood hazard area. So for a Class 9, each policy would save about $33. This is a Class 7. They're saving $99, about $100 a year off their premiums for properties in the floodplain. And then you can see in the community with a big policy base, they're saving $500,000 a year. It really adds up. Communities with a small policy base still have a good story to tell. This is Longmont, Colorado, Class 8. It only has 256 policies in force, but it's only a Class 8, but it's saving over $100 a year for the residents in the floodplain. And that's a really good message for the local officials, especially elected officials, to take back to their constituents. Because of what the community is doing, they're saving money. So that's the key main thing that draws people's attention, but there's a lot more benefits. One of them is you can tell folks that while they're paying taxes for flood protection or maybe paying a stormwater utility fee for flood protection, they may actually be making money. It's very likely that people in the floodplain are saving more money than they're paying for the taxes for all their stormwater management or flood protection programs. Communities that have been in the program say that they are better organized. If you remember that list of various city departments or county departments that need to be coordinated, many times they've never talked to each other about their flood programs, and CRS kind of makes them have to do it. And so they end up with improved programs. The CRS staff, ISO in particular, provides technical assistance to communities on implementing these activities. You noticed we had a lot of public information credits. A lot of communities implement new public information programs that educates their floodplain residents. And we think we've got smarter floodplain residents who know more about how to protect themselves, and they also will want to have their programs preserved in order to keep their premium reduction. So when a community starts talking about changing their flood program or reducing their regulatory standards, folks can say, yeah, you can do that. FEMA won't stop you, but your insurance premiums may go up, and we think that'll have an impact. So that's a key incentive to keep activities still going. So that's the school response, the school list of benefits in the book. Now we'd like to hear from some local folks, and we're going to start off with Ann Patton. I still have control of the PowerPoint, so Ann, you have to tell me when to go from one slide to the next.
Okay, I'll do it. So is Bill Robinson on the call?
Yes, I'm here, Ann.
Hello, Bill. Okay, so I'm Ann Patton. I'm actually retired from the city of Tulsa. I hung out with the city for many years, and now I'm a writer who still follows a lot that's on there. So I understood CRS at sort of the 30,000 feet level. And to say the truth, I never did understand how the formulas worked. So Bill is in the throes of it, and I hope I can allow some time for Bill to talk and then to answer any questions. I thought I heard Ron Flanagan on this call too. And if you're out there, Ron, I just want people to know that Ron has been a spark plug of this program since, I believe, the invention of dirt, a long, long time. So Tulsa was built on the banks of the Arkansas River. And it was the water that lured people to our part of the world in what was then Indian Territory, but now is, of course, northeastern Oklahoma. We're now a town of about 400,000 people. It was the oil boom that built Tulsa. We would have been a small community, except that oil was discovered here around the turn of the century. And in fact, for a while, we were considered the richest town per capita in the United States. I promise you that is no longer true. We came to this world with a frontier mentality, and it has never gone away. And a lot of that holds that a man has a right to do what he wants with his land. So it has been a struggle working with that mentality and the requirements of a good flood management program. If you want to, the next slide, French, if you would. French, you want to put the slide? Okay, so thank you very much. So we did some very unwise development. In fact, a lot of it. We built a lot of our most important critical facilities and many neighborhoods, rich and poor, and a lot of infrastructure in floodplains. And then, of course, we were quite surprised when it all flooded. And the result was, honestly, flooding year after year. Sometimes every other year we'd have a flood. Sometimes it was every year. Sometimes more than once in a year. Until the community actually got pretty numb to it all. The flooding was along the river, but it was also on all those tributary streams that network this community. It seemed like every flood was worse than the last. And somebody looked at the records in the early 80s and saw that we were actually the worst. We had the worst record in the nation. We had 9 federally declared flood disasters in 15 years. That's 1971 to 1986, and that was, at that point, we had the dubious distinction of being the worst in the nation. So, next slide, please. So, we had a big flood in 1984. It was the worst flood we've had, and 14 people died, and it was 7,000 buildings flooded. It was for a town of our size quite horrendous, and it forced us to come together and create a floodplain management program that was pretty comprehensive. We knew pretty quickly that the minimum regulations of the floodplain management program nationally were not going to work for us. We knew we needed to go beyond those regulations. So we created what I think you call a comprehensive floodplain management program after the 84 flood. And hundreds of people were involved in it. The good news is that since that 1986 flood, which was along the Arkansas River, we haven't had a major flood in 45 years. I'm a little frightened to say that because I don't want people to think that it's never going to happen. But it's a record to celebrate. Okay, next slide, please. So when the water dries out, so does the commitment. Somebody told me that years ago, and I think it's pretty accurate. So it has been a struggle to keep this program together for 25 years. We have encountered and I believe educated waves and waves of elected officials and homeowners association presidents and newspapers. You know, it's a constant thing to keep that up.
Darlene.
So the good news is that we joined the community rating system pretty early. In fact, I think we were involved in it even maybe before the program was official. And CRS helped us with all of those benefits that French just listed. Every single one of those benefits, I could testify, have been very, very helpful to us. To me, one of the most important things is that CRS has helped us keep our staff together and our community together on a comprehensive program. So it has encouraged us to continue going above and beyond the minimum, and pull those pieces together. And I want to say, friends, that I'm delighted to see how the program is evolving, and very grateful to you personally, and to CRS for the good partnership that we've had all these years. So, and by the way, in the process, we have expanded that. We've expanded the process of CRS, and it works quite well for us in many hazards, not just in floodplains. So, Bill Robinson is our City of Tulsa stormwater management engineer, and I want to see if Bill wants to add anything about the specifics of CRS if we have.
I've got a few more things I'd like to add to that. Sam mentioned I'm the stormwater planning engineer for the city. I'm also the CRS coordinator. A few things about CRS I'd like to bring out is that most communities, just in their normal activities, have probably got enough points to at least get to a Class 9. For instance, maintaining elevation certificates and things like that are just basics of being a participating community in the NFIP. Another thing that CRS I have found does, if you're following the guidance in CRS to maximize your points, for instance, with your hazard mitigation plan, it helps you to do a better job in your hazard mitigation plan. The maintenance activities that you do along the streams and things to get credit for, it's just documenting what you are already presently doing. So it's not like it's a real complicated process. And there are a lot of things that are just common sense, and the CRS guidance just helps you do a better job of your planning and coordination of activities that you already do. I might mention, for those that don't know, City of Tulsa was the first community in the country to reach a Class 2 CRS rating. We've been held back a little bit because we still have a large number of properties that don't have flood insurance. Originally we had over 20,000 properties, I'm told, or structures in the flood hazard area. We are now down to approximately 8,000. Of those, about a little over 25% have flood insurance. So the 50% coverage prerequisite that's in the old manual, or the current manual, has been a drawback. It's been holding us back from making Class 1. Our last re-verification cycle, we had enough points for 1, but we hadn't overcome that hurdle yet. Fortunately, with the new guidance coming out in 2012, there are ways, or substitutes for that prerequisite, so that we could, by encouraging more flood insurance and doing a few things there, we can still attain a Class 1 even though we don't have the 50% flood insurance coverage. And I'll stay on the call if anyone's got any specific questions later as the call goes on.
Okay. Thank you, Bill and Ann. I am watching the clock, and I think we do need to move on to the next speaker. I would like to remind folks, if you hit *6, that will mute your phone. There does seem to be now and then some background noise. But let's move from Tulsa to the coast of Savannah, and Tom McDonald.
Thank you, French, and thank you all for allowing me to talk to you today about the City of Savannah CRS Outreach Program. You can go ahead and change it. Why do we have to be concerned with flooding? Loss of life and property is why we have to be concerned with flooding and other natural hazards. Go ahead, you can change. One of the objectives of CRS is to promote flood awareness through outreach and education. Okay. Within the CRS program, outreach activities provide many benefits that include improving flood protection, enhanced public safety, environmental awareness, and technical assistance. Go ahead and change. The CRS coordinator spends the majority of his energies in completing the 300 and 400 series. These are the day-to-day activities that the coordinator has to track for the ISO verification. The 300 series requires a lot of outreach activities that involve writing, public speaking, site visits, and now webinars. The focus of the conveying the message is of local hazard. Owners can prevent a lot of heartaches by completing simple projects that prevent a house from flooding, and encourage everyone to purchase flood insurance so that they have money to recover after a storm event. Okay. This is the CRS point overview. The City of Savannah currently is receiving 2,324 points. Within that, the 300 series, we're receiving 626 points, so that's a whole 5% discount because we're at the whole class right there just by doing outreach activities. Of the 626 points, 250 points are from the outreach activities that we undertake with the outreach to the floodplain, outreach to the community, and when we go out into the community and do outreach others. I'll explain that later. But by doing all this, the City of Savannah is saving the citizens in the floodplain over $463,000, or an average of $176 per flood policy. Okay, friends. So the maximum 380 points possible for the activity 330, the city is receiving 66% of those maximum points. So we're not receiving 100%, but yet we're getting some benefits of it. We're still not getting as much as what the rest of the community is getting nationwide, but we're doing pretty good. By concentrating on the outreach projects, we can get a lot of high points. And then outreach points can be the most beneficial activity in protecting of life and property through providing information to the citizens on what they have to do before, during, and after a storm event. Okay, friends. As you can see in blue, an outreach can cover several different activities. The publication will promote your community's activities such as map determinations, elevation certificates, code and ordinance requirements, technical support, and flood warning systems. Okay? Now, the City of Savannah is currently utilizing 3 out of the 4 330 activities of Activity 330. There are 3 of the activities are, as I described earlier, outreach to the community, outreach to the floodplain, and outreach to other OPC, OPF, and OPA. Mr. Michael Blakely and I worked together to share the cost of the $21,000 that we have to spend on sending out the information to the floodplain and to the community. We also coordinate our efforts to work side by side at community outreaches because our jurisdictions are adjacent to each other. And so when a citizen comes up and says, hey, I live in the city of Savannah and I'm off of Brogman Road, we'll go to the map and he's in the county, so I'm able to walk him right over to Michael Blakely and get the flood determination that he needs right away or some additional information. So that really helps if you are having 2 communities next side by side at these events. You can trade the persons off if they're not in your jurisdiction. And some of those examples of outreach to another would be like an Earth Day, Hurricane Expo days, or GIS days. Okay. Each year we have to send out notifications to the community and to the dwellings in the flood zone in the special flood hazard area. The city of Savannah has 140 has a population of 140,000, and the county has 271,000. I'm just trying to give you some ideas of what size of our community is and how much we spend on our outreaches. As I said earlier, we spend $21,000 total for our outreaches to the floodplain and to the community. So I'm just breaking it down. So within the outreach to the community, you have to reach at least 90% of the community. And so we've teamed up with Savannah Morning News to help us meet that goal. And so on Sunday morning, they would send out once a year on a Sunday morning newspaper. They would send out 63,000 copies of a 6-page activity that we promote, 6-page outreach that you see on the screen. That's just one of the pages. The other one will have the maps, and I'll show you that next. The cost to send out the paper is $7,350. Since the Chatham County and I split it, I only have to pay $3,673, so that's a big savings for me to be able to help with it. All right, go ahead and change it. Next. So that's the map that we put in with our publication, and there are certain guidelines you have to have when you send out your outreach to the community, and your map is one of them that would have to equal 1 inch equals 1 mile to get 100% of the points. So in this, and it also has to have certain features like major roadways, different special flood hazard areas delineated, jurisdictional boundaries, and in this case we also had flooded properties where they can see the different hazards. Okay. This is an example of our OPF, which is outreach to the floodplain. We only send out 36,000 of those to the community, and it costs $7,240 for the printing, and there's roughly about 7,000 printing postage. And so, as a city, all I have to do is pay $7,120. So that's another big savings by joining other communities to help you share the cost. Okay. And this is an example of the map that we had to use to meet the 1 inch equals 1 mile scale. We broke it up into 4 different maps, and we used GIS to figure out what areas are on each map, and that generated an address database that we would give to the printers, and they would utilize to send that out to all the different areas on that particular map.
You've got about 1 minute, Tom.
Mm-hmm. Within the outreach to the community, we actually put together, we just didn't go by the guidelines of the CRS manual. We went out and we talked to other people that would have to do promotions each year, also flyers or publicity. And so that when we asked them if they would mind putting their information in our flyer, then we can all share the cost. And that did help a lot. We got $3,000 deducted because we went to the other departments, pulling all our money together. So within the CRS outreach to the community, we brought in Metropolitan Planning Commission, Stormwater Department, Sanitation Department, Water and Sewer Department, and it was now a one-source product that a person can come back and get, citizen will be able to get information on wetland protection, clean water by informing the reader that the whatever they discharge water-wise could end up in our drinking system because of the chemicals and pollutants as they run down. It's actually getting onto our water supplies. Improve the site development. If we don't put up proper soil erosion, that can do a lot of damage to our to the development as they build the sites. Excuse me. We also in that talk about water conservation, and we also talk about reduce, reuse, and recycle. We also put in websites that people can contact to get more information on details, and also the proper contact people to get more information. Okay? I think there are several activities that the community can undertake to help citizens understand their hazards, but those activities will need to be addressed at a later time in more detail as your community grows. But for now, through the CRS outreach program, you can prevent flood damage by promoting smart development in which people are not building in harm's way of danger, by providing outreach and educational opportunities for the public and community leaders so that it will become aware of the dangers, and in hopes they will require higher building standards. Okay.
Okay. Tom, I'm ready to move on to Allison. I know you had a couple more slides.
That's fine.
Of flooded Savannah, but I think your message is pretty clear, and CRS apparently helped you.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go up the coast a little bit to Myrtle Beach, and Allison, can you take it from here?
I can. Thank you, Fred.
And we will save questions. We will have time for questions at the end.
Well, I've got a very short presentation because I think I can get the idea across. really quickly that making things better is how CRS helped us in Myrtle Beach. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. Timing was everything for Myrtle Beach. The CRS was promulgated in 1991, and in that time frame, Myrtle Beach was still recovering from Hurricane Hugo in '89. South Carolina had asked communities, or was pushing communities, to pass a beach management plan for the coastal areas. The developers were pushing back, saying, we really like the laws the way they are now. We don't want any extra regulations, because that doesn't often happen. The developers ask for extra regulations on their own. It does happen occasionally, but not always. Next slide, please. When we went to implement our beach management plans and our new zoning at the same time, the CRS really had our back. Things like freeboard, we maxed out the potential points for freeboard in our application, and a few other things automatically gave us the first 5% of points. That gave us the first 5% discount, the first 500 points. It also forced us to advertise our good ideas. When we went through the application process, we were already doing a lot of good practices that we weren't getting any credit for. It was just part of the culture, part of what the community had put in place on its own. CRS also gave us credits for the good deeds we were doing and helped firm the idea of keeping places like open space open, especially on the ocean front. The founding fathers of Myrtle Beach had a vision for Myrtle Beach as a public beach, and as such had platted out the city with 20-foot alleys for beach access in between each cottage lot. Over time, those cottage lots had become hotels, and then after they became small hotels, they wanted to become bigger. In Myrtle Beach, the idea came from developers to the council that developers wanted to buy the alleyways, buy the access points so they could combine their lots. And in their infinite wisdom, the city council said, well, we understand you want to develop, but we don't really want to give up any of this public access. So we'll let you move the lots together, but we maintain the public access. Maintaining that public access gave us a lot more points to the CRS because we had open space at the end of each of those public accesses that was guaranteed not to be developed on. If you go to the next slide, please. In addition, it forced us really to work together for CRS. The collaboration between departments became really vital. In our public works and stormwater divisions, we became an MS4 community a few years ago, which means that we now have a lot of extra regulations with the NPDES and the Environmental Protection Agency. Some of the public outreach programs that we have to do under the NPDES are similar to or could be combined with the public outreach we need to do for the CRS. So we were able to look at that together and say, well, we could put out one document that would advertise both water quality and water quantity and save us some money. Planning, one of the big tie-ins to protecting your community is how planning works. Planning your community out says that your community can build to a certain height in this area, to a certain density in that area. You can do certain things here and you can do certain things there. It really forced planning to reach out to other departments like Public Works, like Construction Services, which is our zoning and code compliance, to say when we're talking about planning in general, it's not just about what land uses go there, but how those land uses impact how our stormwater works. When you expand your stormwater system or you expand your water and sewer lines into an undeveloped area, you're automatically giving those folks the ability to build something different. So the impacts are going to be there. We had to look at those a little bit harder and more together at the same time rather than in a sequential order as had been done before. And in doing so, we were able to form partnerships between the departments so that now when a developer comes forward and says, I have an idea for a subdivision, all of us come together at the table at once. We get Construction Services, Public Works, Cultural and Leisure Services, which is our Parks Department. They're important to us because they also maintain the open spaces and maintain the roadways. Our police and fire, how many people are going to be living in this neighborhood? Do we need more police in that area? For the fire department, where's the hydrants going to be located? And, is it safe in that area?
Is it going to be inundated in a flood event? Let's move our utilities and our evacuation points out of those areas. And then for our administration, our budget processes and things like that, we had to start budgeting for different programs and getting them involved and letting them see the benefit to the community. Has really helped us work together. Next slide, please. Now, with our annual hazard mitigation and floodplain management meetings, we include CRS point discussions, and we talk about projects that the departments are doing and how they can relate back to CRS. We don't wait. We talk about it every year. We talk about how we can increase our points or maintain our points or enhance our program every year through our annual meeting updates. And elected officials have gone on the bandwagon. A lot of that is due to ISO, the CRS folks coming out to the community and awarding you at a public forum when you go up a level. It makes for a great copy for your local newspaper. It makes for great pictures. It makes for a good outreach opportunity and involves the elected officials. We're receiving a 25% discount on flood insurance premiums in the special flood hazard area right now. Nobody really wants to be that guy that causes that to go away. We have a lot of challenges in Myrtle Beach. We're a tourist area. We have a coast area. We have inland tidal swashes that have their own flooding systems. So we have a lot of things to balance, and we don't always do it right, but we always do it together as in a way that we're progressing to make sure that the community is protected as much as possible in a way that is better overall. And it really, a lot of it stemmed from going forward with the CRS. And so it's been very beneficial for us. Next slide, please. I can wrap it up quickly by the 3 words that my generation will know, which is just do it. The CRS is a really good program. It can be used in a way to help solidify your review processes. It can help bring your departments together more. It can definitely be a focus point for your community for the positives that you're doing for your community. And if you would like any more information about what we do and the programs that we've implemented, my contact information is on the screen.
All righty. Thank you very much, Allison. And now let's move away from the coast, back across the country into the mountains and Fort Collins. Brian.
French, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone, for sharing your information here. And I just want to build on what our colleagues have already talked about. Full disclosure, I am an engineer, okay? So a lot of you don't think the way I think, and that's cool. I'm okay with that. I also want to explain that Fort Collins has 2 floodplain administrators, myself and Marcia Helmus-Robinson. And Marcia is and has been our CRS coordinator since 1997. Now go ahead, next slide, please. Really, when we start talking about CRS in this town, it's a way for us, the number one benefit is it's a way for us to measure the entire program, the stormwater program, from water quality to maintenance to public outreach to community engagement, the mitigation work that we do, our flood warning system, everything, our environmental and social commitment, our strong commitment and focus on public safety. All of it can be measured through the CRS, which is why that's our number one indicator to City Hall as to how well we're doing our jobs. There's a picture right here of a flood that happened in September of this year. This is taken out of my boss's front window at an intersection. This is the reality we face. Our community floods all the time. But as Tulsa said earlier in the same discussion, when the water dries out, so does the commitment. I can tell you what, that is extremely true in our community. Every time it rains, people say, well, why are we flooding? And then when it stops flooding, they say, well, it doesn't flood here. It's not really a problem. And we all get that back and forth. So the CRS helps us kind of mitigate that discussion and say, you know what, it does flood. We can all live with flooding, but there's a safe way to do it and there's a negligent way to do it. Next slide, please. So why do we really do this? What's our purpose? Well, first of all, this is a nationally relevant topic. You all saw what happened in the Northeast. All of our colleagues up there are buried under water and sand, and there's another storm coming in. And there's a great USA Today article that we did post on the NHMA LinkedIn website. The link to that article is in this slide. But it talks about communities that didn't participate in the CRS, and they're now getting a lot of political heat. People are asking them, well, if this program is out there and it had good things associated with it, why did you, the community leaders, not sign up? So what we're talking about today has national relevance. And you know, it says it right at the bottom of my slide. The bottom line is still the dollar. And the community rating system saves your community money. A lot of people stop listening right there. Next slide, please. In Colorado, oh yeah, before I get into Colorado, these are some pictures taken, the two bottom ones, Getty images, both taken in New York City, and the upper one there is New Jersey. You can see this. These photographs show you what human misery and flooding looks like. And, you know, I love saying it, flooding is not sexy. But the CRS program makes it sexy to prepare for floods. So if you only get one quote from me today, that should be the one, right? All right. Next slide, please. Now, looking at Colorado, we worked hard through our Association of Stormwater and Floodplain Managers, or CASFM, where the state organization underneath the Association of State Floodplain Managers, or ASFPM, to try and push higher regulatory standards, and we got those statewide. And so now every community in Colorado can, if they so choose, come in with about, French, correct me if I'm wrong, about 400 points in the CRS right away just for minimum standards at the state level.
Yeah, I'm not sure the latest count, but there's a lot of things done at the state that Colorado communities get automatically, and other states have similar things.
Sure. So right away, our communities that aren't participating in the CRS, one of their motivating factors of them coming into the program would be to say, you don't have to lift a finger if you're following state minimum standards right away. You're almost a Class 9 just on entry into the atmosphere. And you can see we've got 46 communities in the CRS that are rated 9 or better in Colorado. Us and Arvada are right up there in that top tier, and we've got a number of cities and a county at the bottom of the slide there that are also, you know, better than half. Better than a 7, better than an 8. And the list of 7 and 8s are pretty long. So, you know, as a state, we've worked hard to try and participate in this program because the benefits of it, economically alone, are very compelling to elected officials. Next slide, please. So looking back at Fort Collins again, we do have higher regulatory standards even above state standards. We have local floodplains. We have a long freeboard list. We've got a gauge system that's one of the most dense systems in the United States, and a lot of that was funded with money after our disaster in 1997. We had an urban flash flood that did $200 million worth of damage in a town of 120,000 people. Well, now we're a town of 140,000 people. And if that same flood came through, I'd like to think that the damages would be less. By the way, 5 people lost their lives in that same flood. So one of the things that we do is a major public outreach effort. Every year we have Flood Awareness Week, and throughout the year we do open houses. We're starting to use mixed media, and we found a lot of success with YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. And our public information officer down at City Hall has been very much encouraging us to use those mixed media and the social media outlets because we have a captive audience. People are watching the city, waiting to hear from us. And it's our hope that when the next disaster hits, they won't say, wow, nobody told us. We had no idea. We'd like people to say, we took some proactive measures like signing up for LEADA 911. That's the Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority for Larimer County, which is the county that Fort Collins sits in. It's an auto dialer. It's a way for me to get on there and say, flooding is occurring in your area. Take these precautions immediately and stay tuned for more information. Boom, I can send that message out in 160 characters or less in just a matter of seconds. But I tell people the best way for me to get to you is for you to let me get to you. It says it right there. If we can't reach you, we can't alert you. So proactive public outreach is something that we're very passionate about. And, you know, you see 1,600 addresses receive direct mailers from us. We have about 1,400 structures at risk. We only have 400 policies in town. So our work is not done here. Next slide, please. So here's some pictures from town. There's a monument in the top left corner to the rescuers who saved over 400 successful rescues in 1997. Unfortunately, 5 of those did not work out the way we had hoped. Pictures from the 97 flood are in the bottom center in the top right corner. You can see our gauge, one of our flood warning gauges down in the bottom right. And there's a historic photograph from right in the middle of town. Colorado State University is in our town. And there's a building there. That's the occupational therapy building being pumped out in 1938. And then in the bottom left corner, this is my favorite photo of a house flooding during, it's not in a floodplain, by the way, not in a special flood hazard area, but this house floods all the time. I just got a demolition permit for this house 2 years ago and signed it the day it came across my desk. So that house is no longer standing. no longer a community liability. Next slide, please. And it's a CRS program that helps us really take that information and send it out. So, again, here's some information for the entire state. My contact info, being the vice chair of our state organization, and certainly Marcia's contact info, being our Community Rating System Committee chair in that same organization and our CRS coordinator in town. She's really been a pioneer in this program, and she wasn't able to sit in on it. But I can tell you what, I've just got some of my notes here looking at it. One of the things that makes our community unique, and this isn't in my slides, is we sit right at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. And I'm the only one that talks like a Yankee during this presentation, so I apologize. Me and French, we're the only two that sound like we're not well-versed in D-zone flooding. But I can tell you right away, when a wildfire sweeps through your watershed, the way you look at flooding completely changes. It happened in Boulder, just south of us, a couple of years ago. It happened in Denver about 10 years ago when the Hayman fire burned 200,000 acres in their watershed on the South Platte River. And then it happened to us last year. We had 80,000 acres burned, which is about 10% of our watershed. And now the sediment and water load that comes off the foothills every time it rains is just unbelievable. So the first thing our cable company did, Cable 14, locally owned here by the city of Fort Collins, is they came to me and they said, hey, let's do a quick public outreach video about flooding and fires. I said, great. We stood out in the field for about 10 minutes, got a video, sent it out, and within one day, we had over 100 people in town watching, sharing, and talking about that video. And that's 100 people that we reached out to in one day with 10 minutes of my work and 10 minutes of Cable 14's work. And that video has gone all around this town. So, I can't stress enough, when something happens, you've got to strike while the iron's hot. The CRS is set up to give you due recognition for the work that you're doing right now. And I can't tell you, the number one benefit for us is that it does measure our entire program, lets our elected leaders see that we're not just being reactive, but we're being proactive about public safety. And for me, that's why I like supporting the work that French does and a lot of the work that goes on with the CRS task force and all of our colleagues that are working on this stuff day to day at ISO, gentlemen like French, Bill Lesser at FEMA. I mean, these guys are the front line for public safety. And that's the whole reason we're in this program, is to make sure that those who are paying our bills, our neighbors, our friends, our family, they're the ones that are kept safe. That's all I have, French.
All righty. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you to all the speakers. You've heard a whole litany of ways the CRS has helped communities when they dry out, the commitment dries out. 3 folks talked about public information. Several talked about how it helped them with developers and their elected officials. And Brian in particular talked about measuring the programs, and we also heard about coordinating various efforts. A lot of variety, a lot of benefits besides just saving dollars. We will have a second here for questions, but I wanted to really thank all the speakers for getting ready and being available on kind of short notice. And the PowerPoint you've been watching, which includes people's URLs and contact information, will be put up on the NHMA website as a PDF file, small enough for you to download. And Wes Shaw, another NHMA member, has volunteered to record this. And we think it's going to work. You never know on these things, but we expect within a few days to have this available possibly as a YouTube download for you to hear, not only watch the PowerPoint, but hear the talkers, the speakers, and make that available for other people in your community. I especially hope you might want to pass it on to some of the elected officials.